Hey everyone! Tonight we're diving into a time long before mini gels, electric toothbrushes, or even the humble tube of Crest. We're exploring how people actually try to clean their teeth before toothpaste existed. Or, to be completely honest, whether they even bothered. You're about to drift gently into the tartar-covered jaws of history. Don't worry, there's no need to floss afterward, unless you've recently eaten a medieval turnip. Before we begin, feel free to tap like or subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this brand of historical bedtime absurdity. Drop a comment about your nighttime oral hygiene routine, or the strangest thing you've ever put in your mouth for cleaning purposes. Go ahead and dim the lights, switch on that fan for maximum white noise, and settle in. You're about to meet people who believe beer counted as mouthwash, who scrub their teeth with objects you wouldn't even use to poke a squirrel, and whose morning breath could have been classified as a weapon. Relax, snuggle under the blankets, and prepare to discover a world where plaque wasn't a dental issue. It was a way of life. Think about it. What would your breath smell like if you lived in ancient Egypt? Would you let your partner scrape your tongue with a frayed stick? Would you kiss a medieval noble with teeth like a haunted piano? Got a toothache in the year 1200? Would you pull the thing yourself, or just start drinking at sunrise? Was there an ancient version of Listerine? Did anyone really try brushing with sand? And what did people even use before floss? Chicken bones. Picture a Roman gladiator. Do you think he worried about gum disease? Or did he just embrace halitosis as part of the lifestyle? Congratulations. You've just woken up in a world where toothpaste doesn't exist, sugar is a luxury, and every meal is a brand new opportunity for dental regret. Good luck. You open your eyes in the golden sands of ancient Egypt, surrounded by gods, mummies, and a surprising amount of sand in your sandals. Before you start your day building pyramids, you reach for your morning toothbrush, a frayed twig called a chew stick. Forget bristles and fluoride. Here, it's all about gnawing on a licorice root or a branch from the Salvadora persa bush, hoping it'll dislodge last night's barley bread. For toothpaste, how about a mix of ground pumice, burnt eggshells, and a touch of myrrh for flavor? Because nothing says fresh breath like scraping your gums with ancient gravel. Let's set the scene. The year is somewhere around 1500 BC. You're wearing your best linen kilt, maybe a dash of copper-based eyeshadow, and you've already been up for hours. Why? Because in Egypt, the sun and your mother-in-law are equally relentless. Before breakfast, before a single date or fig touches your lips, you begin your daily dental ritual, otherwise known as attempted self-dentry, with whatever happens to grow near the Nile. Chewits aren't just for show. They're chosen for their fibrous texture and supposed medicinal powers handed down by priests and healers who, let's be honest, were basically ancient Egypt's answer to TikTok wellness influences. The taste somewhere between earthy health food store and last year's Christmas tree. As you gnaw on your twig, you work to fray the end into soft fibers, creating a kind of proto-toothbrush. The chewing is methodical. It's not just about cleaning. It's a mini meditation, a moment to reflect on your day and hope your breath isn't strong enough to offend Horus. Ancient Egyptians believed that a clean mouth kept you spiritually pure, which is the kind of thing you tell yourself while spitting splinters into the wind. There's no running water, so you swish with whatever's handy. Maybe a cup of Nile water with just a hint of crocodile, or a rinse of weak beer if you're feeling festive. Modern mouthwash not invented. You get a swirl of ancient essence, also known as whatever liquid is least likely to kill you. Next, it's time for toothpaste. You reach for a little linen bag full of what can only be described as crunchy powder. Here's the recipe. Grind up some burnt eggshells. Add pulverized ox hooves, a dash of pumice for that signature exfoliating effect, and maybe a pinch of dried iris flower, ancient Egypt's answer to mini freshness, except more floral and less effective. The royal family occasionally tosses in some frankincense or myrrh for that high-end spa feeling. But you get yesterday's burnt bread crust. This gritty concoction is worked onto your chew stick and then vigorously applied to your teeth. The sensation like trying to polish a gemstone with gravel. Very thorough, very unpleasant, and highly effective if your goal is to remove both plaque and the will to live. Sensory details are everywhere. Your gums tingle from the coarse powder. Your teeth squeak like wet sandals on marble, and the taste lingers, smoky, earthy, with a little burst of did something just die in there. The smell of ground myrrh hangs in the air, mixing with the scent of roasting onions and camel. By the time you're done, your teeth might feel marginally smoother, but your gums are contemplating a new life in another mouth. Why go through all this trouble? The Egyptians believed dental health was connected to the health of the soul. Tooth decay wasn't just a cosmetic issue. It was seen as a curse, a literal sign that the gods were annoyed with your dietary choices or your lack of devotion. In the afterlife, you wanted to present a full set of teeth, not a haunted crypt. Of course, reality had other plans. Archaeologists have found plenty of mummies with teeth so worn down from sand and grit that they make modern British dentistry look luxurious. Fun fact, sand in your bread was a given thanks to grinding stones that generously seasoned every loaf with extra minerals. If you think gluten-free bread is tough, wait until you've tried chewing on ancient Egyptian sourdough. It's basically edible pottery. Still, this system sort of worked. Twigs contain natural antiseptics and astringents that help keep bacteria at bay. And the abrasives did scrub away food and probably the occasional enamel. Did it prevent all dental issues? No. But in a world without sugar, soda, or caramel-filled nightmares, most of the cavities came from dietary grit, not sweets. And that's your morning routine. No toothpaste tubes, no floss, no guilt from your dentist, just you, a stick, a bag of powder, and the quiet, comforting knowledge that everyone around you is dealing with the same crunchy, squeaky smile. On the bright side, nobody expects you to have pearly whites. In fact, if you still have most of your teeth by age 30, you're basically ancient Egypt's version of a toothpaste commercial. So, finish your chew stick, flash your sandy grin, and march confidently into the desert, ready to face another day. Mouth as clean as 3,000 years of trial and error can manage. You're living your best toga life in Athens, circa 500 BCE. The morning routine is simple. Rinse your mouth with wine. Maybe dab a little olive oil if you're feeling fancy. As for actual cleaning, you're mixing ashes and crushed bones with a dab of honey, smearing this unholy paste on your teeth. It works about as well as it sounds. The goal isn't a Hollywood smile. It's to avoid looking like a barbarian who chews rocks for fun. Let's set the scene. You wake up to the sound of sheep and the not-so-subtle snoring of your neighbor, separated by a thin wall and even thinner standards of privacy. The air is cool, the marble is cold under your feet, and you begin your morning not with an oat milk latte, but with a goblet of diluted wine. Yes, even before breakfast. Don't judge. In Athens, water is risky business, and everyone knows you're less likely to die of dysentery if you start the day with a nice swirl of wine. You swish the wine around your mouth, hoping it'll scare off the worst of the bad breath. The taste is slightly acidic. The afterburn is real, and you can't help but wonder if the wine is doing more for your teeth or your mood. If you're feeling especially decadent or you're still tipsy from last night's symposium, you might finish with a splash of olive oil. Richer citizens swear it softens the gums, which in practice just means you have an extra slick smile and the sensation of being gently basted like a Sunday roast. Now comes the cleaning part. Forget about soft bristled brushes or gentle foaming pastes. Instead, you mix a handful of ashes left over from last night's cooking fire or sacrificial offering with finely crushed animal bones. If you're lucky, you can add a little honey to bind it together and mask in flavor. If you're unlucky, well, you get the full experience. Smoky, gritty, with a texture somewhere between old pottery and gravel driveway. You rub this gritty paste onto your teeth using a rag or your finger, working it in with a combination of optimism and resignation. Every pass is like exfoliating your enamel, scrubbing away plaque, last night's lentils, and on a good day, your dental hopes and dreams. The sensation is memorable. It's a crunching, scraping, eye-watering ordeal punctuated by the taste of burned animal and the faintest hint of honey. Somewhere in the background, a philosopher is ranting about the virtues of moderation while you're just trying not to swallow a tooth. The ancient Greeks believed in balance, the golden mean, but apparently not when it came to their dental routines. If you're truly committed to a clean mouth, you might follow up with a rinse of vinegar or salt water. It stings, it tingles, and it does absolutely nothing for the lingering taste of scorched lamb bones. Some folks chew on aromatic herbs, mint, myrtle, or fennel, hoping to perfume their breath just enough to survive the morning marketplace. Halitosis isn't just a modern dating fear. In Athens, it's a sign you've given up on both hygiene and the gods. But let's be honest, nobody in ancient Greece is aiming for perfection. Dental hygiene is more about not being at the bottom of the social barrel. The true insult is to be called barbaros, a barbarian. Greeks pride themselves on being just civilized enough to scrape their teeth with something other than dirt. But the standards are, let's say, flexible. Statues might have perfect marble smiles, but real Athenians, most are working with a mouthful of slightly gray, thoroughly battered murs and a healthy fear of hard bread. Archaeological evidence confirms that tooth decay wasn't rampant thanks to a diet low in processed sugar. The real dental villain is wear and tear. Coarse bread, seeds, bits of stone from the mill. By age 30, you've got teeth with the texture of a sea-worn pebble and the color of a lightly used amphora. Dental pain is a fact of life, handled stoically or drowned with yet more wine. If a tooth really starts to ache, you can visit a healer who will offer prayers, pick uses, or failing that pliers and determination. Yet, as you finish your routine, you feel a sense of accomplishment. Your breath is, if not fresh, at least adequately fermented. Your teeth, though gritty, are free of last night's chickpeas. You're ready to face the agora, the philosophers, and whatever disaster lunch has in store. And remember, nobody's expecting a winning smile. In fact, if your teeth look too white, people will suspect you of being either a foreigner or a fraud. In ancient Greece, oral hygiene is a process, not a destination, and definitely not an Instagram filter. So, wrap yourself in your toga, step into the sunlight, and flash your uniquely Athenian smile, ash, olive oil, and all. In a world where Socrates can talk circles around you before breakfast, the least you can do is not look like you've been gnawing on a rock. As a Roman citizen, you enjoy running water, heated baths, and if you're brave, a mouthful of ground-up animal bones. Romans prized white teeth. So they used everything from abrasive oyster shells to the ashes of burned bread. The rich, ever innovative, sometimes rinsed with urine, believing it kept teeth bright. Your breath is now a biohazard. But hey, you're technically clean. Let's set the scene. It's a crisp Roman morning. You've woken up in a bustling city where the streets hum with gossip and the drains run mostly downhill. You've survived another night on a hard straw mattress, and you're craving something to wash away the remnants of last night's garum sauce and honey dormies. Naturally, you begin your day with a tooth cleaning session that would make even the most desperate modern dentist consider a career in pottery. First, you select your weapon, a rag, a frayed stick, or if you're on the cutting edge of Roman dental technology, a bronze toothpick with your initials carved into the handle for a touch of imperial bling. Toothpicks are everywhere, on tables and pockets and toga. Romans believed the spaces between your teeth were basically communal real estate for every poppy seed and bit of mutton that crossed your lips. So, it was polite and essential to dig around with something pointy after meals. The click-clack of toothpicks is as much a part of the Roman dinner soundtrack as the clinking of goblets. Now for the main event, toothpaste. The most committed citizens opt for a blend of ground bones, oyster shells, and the ashes of burned bread, all mixed with a little honey or vinegar to make a paste that clings to your teeth with the tenacity of a Roman tax collector. For extra sparkle, some recipes include bits of powdered mouse or the occasional charred feather, because why not? If it's available in the pantry, it's fair game for dental care. The taste, somewhere between beach sand at low tide and forgotten barbecue. The sensation, imagine exfoliating your teeth with aquarium gravel and then wondering if you're bleeding or just very enthusiastic. If you're feeling especially ambitious or cursed with too much money, you might rinse with a splash of Portuguese urine. Yes, urine. Romans were nothing if not practical, and they believed urine imported for the highest quality, mind you, could whiten teeth and banish stains. Wealthy Romans sent their slaves out to collect jars of the stuff from public urinals, then used it as an all-purpose mouthwash, stain remover, and on truly wild days, laundry detergent. This was considered high-status cleaning. In reality, it just meant that the air at Roman banquets was a swirling mix of perfume, olives, and ammonia. Bon appetit. After the scrubbing and rinsing, you might dab your gums with a little ammoiar or chew on a sprig of parsley. Not so much for health, but to convince everyone at the bathhouse that you're above average. If not in breath, then at least in effort. The myth of the perfectly white Roman smile endures, but archaeological evidence tells a different story. Most Romans had teeth that were more light beige than gleaming marble. The abrasives helped a bit with surface stains, but did a number on the enamel. By age 40, most citizens were down a few molars and nursing some serious gum recession. The phrase "when in Rome, do as the Romans do" never mentions how many teeth you'll lose by following their dental advice. Still, dental pain was just another minor inconvenience right up there with lead pipes and unpredictable gladiator riots. If a tooth became unbearable, you could always visit the neighborhood medicus who might pack the offending area with crushed herbs, pour wine over it for medicinal reasons, of course, or failing that, yank it out with forceps that hadn't seen hot water since Caesar was in sandals. Anesthetics were usually a strong friend holding you down and a quick prayer to whichever god you thought had a soft spot for teeth. Yet, despite the biohazard level breath and the high risk of chipping a tooth on breakfast bread, Romans took pride in their appearance. Bad teeth were a sign of bad breeding or bad luck, and the truly fashion-conscious sometimes had gold wires fitted to keep their remaining teeth from wandering off to start new lives elsewhere in their mouths. If you had a particularly gaping dental void, you might stuff it with a pebble or a ball of wax, or just master the art of the closed lip smirk. So as you stroll off to the forum, mouth tingling, breath smoldering, and gums a little worse for wear, remember this. In Rome, being clean was always relative, and when it came to dental hygiene, technically clean was sometimes the best you could hope for. Smile wide, but maybe not too wide. Nobody needs to know how many mice were sacrificed for the cause. You're waking up in an ancient Indian village where dental hygiene means chewing on neem or babool twigs. The ends are frayed into natural bristles, and the taste ice acquired. Afterward, you might rub your teeth with charcoal, salt, or aromatic spices like cardamom and clove, turning every morning into a culinary experiment with unpredictable effects on your gums. Let's slow walk into the scene. The sun is just rising. Birds are making their melodramatic presence known, and the air smells of wood smoke, jasmine, and the faint promise of monsoon mud. You step out of your clay-walled house, reach for the bundle of twigs kept above the door, and snap off a fresh neem stick. This is your toothbrush, toothpaste, and if you choose unwisely, your breakfast-flavoring All-in-One, neem, for the uninitiated, is a taste sensation that can only be described as herb-bally intense with undertones of medicinal dread. Chewing on it is like announcing to the world and your taste buds that you are committed to dental health and personal suffering. You chew the end of the twig until it splays out into a little brush. Nature's own version of Oral-B. No plastic, no ADA approval, just pure unfiltered plant power. The stick is surprisingly effective. Its fibrous tips scrub away last night's lentil stew and whatever you picked out of your teeth after market day. The neem plant is prized in Ayurveda, the ancient Indian system of medicine, for its antibacterial and antifungal qualities. So as you're grinding your jaw through that bitter taste, remind yourself it's not punishment, it's prevention. In modern terms, you're micro-doing wellness by the milligram. If you're feeling fancy, or if you just can't take any more neem, you might opt for bobo, a slightly less bitter alternative, but still firmly in the acquired taste category. Chewing sticks aren't just for the morning. It's a full-day event. People carry them in their waistbands, tuck them behind their ears, and whip them out for a quick midday refresh. The way you or I might reach for a breath mint before a terrifying work call. Your ancestors weren't just committed. They were relentless. Once the twig routine is done, it's time to level up your oral hygiene game. Enter the powders. In a little terracotta dish near the water jar, there's a mixture of charcoal and salt. If you're upper crust or just curious, you'll add dried ginger, turmeric, or even the ashes of medicinal herbs. Take a pinch between your fingers, rub it on your teeth, and brace yourself. The sensation is equal parts spa day and DIY sandblaster. On a good day, the charcoal absorbs mouth odor and maybe a little humility. On a bad day, your gums will sting like you just tried to gargle the Ganges. But it doesn't stop there. No self-respecting dental warrior leaves the house without a palate cleanser. Enter cardamom, clove, and fennel seeds, the original breath mints. You roll them around your mouth, letting the oils work their way through the charcoal haze. The cardamom offers sweet relief. The clove numbs any remaining pain and most of your tongue. And the fennel gives you a burst of licorice freshness that for a fleeting moment almost makes up for the neem. Oral health in ancient India isn't just about the teeth. It's about balance. Ayurveda teaches that keeping the mouth clean helps balance the doshas, your body's elemental energies. Bad breath isn't just awkward at the temple. It's a sign your inner fire is out of whack. Priests and healers hand down recipes for rinses, pastes, and powders, each promising brighter teeth and better karma. You might swirl your mouth with warm sesame oil in a ritual called oil pulling, promising everything from fresh breath to inner peace. If you can ignore the fact that you're swishing salad dressing for 5 solid minutes, of course, there are downsides. Some of these techniques area abrasive in every sense of the word. Charcoal powder may be antimicrobial, but it's also a fast track to reseeding gums if you get too enthusiastic. Twigs, for all their eco-friendly charm, are a splinter hazard if you bite too hard. But compared to the dental options in other parts of the ancient world, see urine rinses bone dust. Ancient India's approach is almost spa-like. So, as you finish your morning routine, spit a final mouthful of charcoal into the garden and pop a clove on your tongue. You feel clean, balanced, and just the right amount of humbled. Your breath is sharper than your wit. Your teeth are probably still intact, and you're ready to face another day, armed with nothing more than a stick and the world's most determined palate. In a world without dentists, that's about as good as it gets. In Han Dynasty China, you're lucky enough to have an early version of the toothbrush, a bamboo stick with boar bristles. Tooth powder recipes include salt, ginseng, and mysterious fragrant herbs. If you're rich, you get silk threads for flossing. If not, it's a splintery toothpick and a prayer. Let's step quietly into the misty morning of a Han Dynasty courtyard. You awaken in a house where the floors are swept with bamboo brooms and the air is perfumed with incense, possibly to cover up what's going on in your mouth. Before you greet the day, you reach for your prized bamboo-handled toothbrush. Yes, you're ahead of most of the world. Someone in your household has lashed a little bundle of boar bristles to the end of a stick, ushering you into the future of dental suffering. No soft plastics here. This is a brush with the gentle caress of a boot scrubber. You dab your bristles into a jar of tooth powder. The blend is equal parts folk medicine and culinary adventure. Salt for abrasion. A little dried ginseng for vitality, and fragrant herbs, which could mean anything from ground mint to the root of a plant. Your great aunt swears cured her bunions. Some powders add a touch of camphor or green tea, creating a cloud of herbal aroma, strong enough to momentarily convince you that something magical, or at least less stinky, is happening. If you're truly high class, your powder arrives in a porcelain pot. If not, it's mixed up in whatever container wasn't needed for pickling last year's turnips. As you work the brush over your teeth, you get the familiar combination of aggressive scrubbing and random sharp bristle attacks to the gum line. There's no pressure sensor, no soothing blue light, just you and the distinct possibility of drawing blood before breakfast. Still, it's an improvement over the alternatives. The tooth powder is coarse, so you know it's working. Or more accurately, you hope it's working and not just stripping away the last bit of enamel you own. Your gums tingle, your tongue burns slightly from the ginseng, and the aftertaste is equal parts salty and mysterious. Now, it's time to get serious about the spaces between your teeth. If you're from a family with money or imperial connections, congratulations. You have access to silk threads. These are the ancient world's answer to dental floss, and they glide between your teeth with smooth, luxurious efficiency until you hit that one gap stuffed with last night's sticky rice. For everyone else, there are toothpicks carved from bamboo or sharpened willow twigs. They're effective if you don't mind an occasional splinter, and they double as a useful tool for gesturing dramatically at dinner. For the finishing touch, many people in ancient China chewed on aromatic twigs, orange peel, or even a tiny lump of dried ginger, breath freshener, sure, but also a subtle flex in front of the neighbors. If you could afford fancy ingredients, you wanted people to know, yes, the Zong family, always chewing something spicy and mysterious, must be doing well. Meanwhile, the less fortunate gnaw on plain sticks, hoping at least to distract from any lingering aftertaste of fermented tofu. Why all this effort? It's partly about status and partly about health. In Chinese medicine, everything is connected. Your teeth, your breath, your digestion, your qi. Bad breath isn't just embarrassing. It's a sign your yin and yang are out of whack, or you've angered a particularly fussy ancestor. Records show that scholars, monks, and physicians all had opinions on mouth care. From the right herbal mixture to the correct angle for your bamboo brush. Maintaining a clean mouth is a sign of harmony, discipline, and respect for yourself, your ancestors, and anyone within sniffing range. Still, this system isn't perfect. The bristles were down quickly, and the tooth powder can be a little ambitious. If you get too enthusiastic with your brushing, you risk reseeding gums, a fate only slightly less terrifying than public embarrassment during tea ceremonies. But at least you're not alone. The toothpick is a constant companion, tucked into sleeves or hairpins, ready to tackle any rogue morsel the moment it dares to show itself. So, as you rinse your mouth with a ladle of cold tea, savor the tingling freshness, or at least the brief absence of yesterday's garlic. Your teeth might not sparkle like imperial jade, but they're clean enough for family portraits, and safe enough that you can laugh at your uncle's jokes without worrying that your breath will cause a diplomatic incident. Armed with bristles, powders, and just enough herbal optimism, you're ready to take on another day, one tooth at a time. You're in a smoky longhouse, eating fermented fish with your Viking friends. After meals, you grab a goose feather or whittle a sliver of bone to scrape out the leftovers. Brushing, not a thing. But toothpicks, oh yes, Vikings loved their toothpicks almost as much as their axes. Halitosis was a badge of honor. Picture this. It's pitch black outside. The North Sea wind is howling, and inside your timber longhouse, the air is thick with wood smoke, sweat, and the scent of yesterday's cabbage stew that never really leaves. You're wrapped in furs, gnawing on a chunk of dried cod, while someone at the end of the bench is is already 3 mess deep and belting out a saga about how he once bit a bear. Welcome to dinner in Viking Scandinavia, a place where every meal is a test of dental fortitude, and the post-fast ritual is less rinse and spit and more poke and pray. You finish your fish, bones, scales, and all, and look around for something to clear the battlefield that is now your MERS. There's no such thing as a toothbrush here. The Vikings had 2 main tools for oral hygiene: the ever-handy toothpick, and for the high rollers, a feather from a goose or a crow. The feather isn't for show. You split the tip and use it to poke, prod, and pluck the last bits of pickled herring from between your teeth. If you're feeling especially artistic, you might carve a toothpick out of bone, or even whittle one from a splinter of spruce, which doubles as both dental aid and emergency weapon if dinner gets out of hand. The toothpick was more than a tool. It was practically a fashion accessory. Archaeologists have found Viking burial sites with toothpicks tucked into pouches or strung on necklaces, a sign that even in the afterlife, you don't want to face Odin with spinach in your teeth. Toothpicking was a public affair. No shame, no subtlety, just a hearty scrape while you gossip about the weather or the latest raid. In fact, some Vikings believed that cleaning between their teeth was a good luck charm before battle, because if you could face down a walrus tusk wedged between your MERS, you could handle anything. As for actual brushing, forget it. The Viking approach to oral hygiene was less about sparkling teeth and more about brute survival. The diet was tough. Rye bread baked with sand and grit, stews thickened with bark, roasted meats, and lots of tough, stringy root vegetables. If you still had your teeth by age 40, you were either incredibly lucky or had the jaws of a bear. The toothpick helped, but it was mostly damage control. Breath freshening, not even on the list. Viking breath was a force of nature. Hatosis wasn't just accepted, it was embraced. There are records from other cultures, mostly monks and traders from the south, who complained about the Viking smell. But Vikings themselves seemed unbothered. After all, when your daily life involves rowing for miles, raiding monasteries, and wrestling wild animals, you don't have much time to fret about oral elegance. If anything, bad breath was probably considered proof that you were alive, well-fed, and not afraid of a little fermented shark. That said, Viking skeletons show surprising evidence of dental care. Teeth were often worn down, but relatively free from severe decay, likely thanks to a low-sugar diet and constant chewing on tough food. In a way, their teeth were battle-tested like the rest of them. Still, abscesses and infections happened, and if you lost a tooth, you just shrugged and kept going. No implants, no dentures, just a slightly louder whistle when you shouted your war cry. So after dinner, you dig out your trusty toothpick, scrape away the reindeer jerky, and maybe give your gums a good poke for luck. You raise your mug, belch approvingly, and grin at your friends. Teeth slightly yellow, breath robust enough to keep trolls at bay. If anyone comments, you remind them. A Viking smile isn't supposed to dazzle. It's supposed to intimidate. And as you settle back into the warmth of the longhouse, toothpick at the ready for tomorrow's feast, you realize you wouldn't have it any other way. Clean enough to chew, sharp enough to bite, and proud enough to never ever admit you miss modern toothpaste. You've landed in medieval Europe, where oral hygiene is largely theoretical. The main technique is ignore it and hope for the best. Some people chew on aromatic sticks, rub their teeth with cloth, or try rinsing with vinegar. Most just accept that by 30 their smile resembles a row of crumbling gravestones. The sun rises over a foggy village, and you groan your way out of a straw mattress that hasn't been washed since last harvest. You shiver in your linen shift. Splash a bit of cold water on your face. Never mind that the water's as murky as your prospects, and begin your daily battle with dental doom. There's no such thing as a morning routine here, unless you count swearing quietly at the sound of the church bell. Brushing your teeth is not a widespread practice. You're more likely to be hit by a flying turnip than to find a medieval toothbrush. If you're newly born or simply bored, You might attempt to clean your teeth by rubbing them with a piece of coarse linen. This removes precisely 0% of the actual plaque, but at least it makes you feel like you're doing something. The more innovative might chew on twigs from aromatic trees like hazel, mint, or rosemary. The idea is that the woody fibers act like tiny bristles, while the scent masks your breath long enough to get through morning prayers without the priest fainting. If you're lucky enough to have access to imported spices, you might even chew on cloves or cardamom pods, turning your mouth into a medieval potpourri satch. It doesn't fix anything, but at least you'll die with fragrant halitosis. For those who are truly committed, or perhaps just desperate, there's the vinegar rinse. Take a big swig of the sourest, cheapest vinegar you can find and swish it around. The burning sensation means it's working, right? Sure. If your definition of working is eroding your enamel while you contemplate your life choices. On rare occasions, some people try wine, salt water, or even old beer as mouthwash, mainly because it's already there. And frankly, anything beats the taste of last night's garlic stew. But most folks just don't bother. Medieval food is coarse. Bread is bulked up with sawdust and grit, and vegetables come straight from the field, dirt included. No extra charge. You chew, you swallow, and you hope for the best. As a result, by the time you hit your late 20s, your dental landscape is a war zone. Blackened murs, chipped incisors, and a few mysterious holes where teeth used to be. Archaeologists regularly find medieval skeletons with abscessed jaws and teeth so worn down they could double as millstones. There's a reason medieval art rarely shows anyone smiling. Tooth pain is a fact of life. The answer? Ignore it as long as possible. When the pain becomes too much to bear, your options are limited and terrifying. You could try a pus made of herbs, garlic, and the prayers of your neighbors. Or visit the local barber surgeon, who's equally likely to cut your hair as he is to yank your aching tooth out with a pair of rusty pliers. No anesthesia, no antiseptic, just a stiff drink and a friend to hold you down. If you survive, congratulations. You've just lost another tooth and gained a story for the next feast. Let's talk about breath. Medieval bad breath is not just common, it's almost expected. No one is carrying around a tin of mints. If your breath smells slightly less foul than the town latrine, you're ahead of the game. People blame everything from imbalanced humors to the influence of the moon, and don't expect sympathy. If you complain about tooth pain, you'll be offered a slug of ale, a handful of dried sage to chew, and a reminder that at least you aren't dead from the plague. Yet by the time evening rolls around, your gums are throbbing and your teeth are quietly decaying in the background. You settle in by the hearth, nor on a hunk of barley bread, and maybe try one last swipe at your teeth with a rag just to keep up appearances. Your smile is crooked, gap-toothed, and more than a little haunted, but in medieval Europe, that's just how things go. The only real advice is simple. Try not to die of toothache before you die of everything else. So you go to sleep hoping your dreams are less painful than your jaw, and that tomorrow brings something, anything better than vinegar. In the Middle Ages, survival is the real victory. And oral hygiene, that's just a pleasant rumor. You're living in the bustling cities of medieval Baghdad or Cairo where hygiene is a religious duty. The miswak stick frayed, spicy, and mildly antiseptic is used before every prayer. For the elite, there's mouth perfume, rose water, musk, and precious spices. The result? You might still lose teeth, but at least you smell intriguing. Let's set the scene. The call to prayer echoes from the nearest minuet. Sunlight glimmers on whitewashed walls, and the city hums with the sounds of trade poetry and far too many street hawkers selling dates. You roll out of bed. If you're lucky, it's a mattress. If not, a pile of woven mats, and the first order of business is cleanliness. In this era, keeping your mouth clean is both an act of piety and a cultural flex. Forget snoozing your alarm. You're more likely to miss breakfast than your morning oral routine. The Mizwak is the star of the show. You pluck a small and lead twig, most likely from the Salvadora persa tree, but any number of mildly astringent medicinal woods will do. You chew the end until it splays into a natural brush, then scrub away at your teeth and gums. The taste is sharp, slightly bitter, and oddly refreshing, like herbal mouthwash with a built-in wood chip bonus. The sensation is both tingly and bracing, as if your gums are waking up before the rest of you. The Mizwak is convenient, portable, and let's be honest, the ultimate low-tech multi-tool. Toothbrush, gum massager, prayer aid, and in a pinch, chew toy for a fussy toddler. But this isn't just about fighting bad breath. Cleanliness is built into daily life, reinforced by both medical wisdom and religious teachings. The Prophet Muhammad famously encouraged oral hygiene, and specifically the use of the Mizwak. So using it isn't just about impressing your friends at the bazaar. It's a direct ticket to extra spiritual points. You're supposed to use it before every prayer, which if you're keeping count, is 5 times a day. In modern terms, you'd basically be living with a toothbrush holstered at your belt like a dental cowboy, always ready for a quick scrub between business meetings and family feasts. If you've got money or just aspirations of grandeur, your oral routine gets a major upgrade. For the wealthy, hygiene goes from functional to fragrant. Elite households stock up on mouth perfumes. Little vials of scented water infused with rose petals, musk, saffron, cloves, or even rare Indian sandalwood. A single dab on your tongue or a rinse after cleaning, and you're ready to face the day with breath that smells like a botanical garden caught fire in a spice market. The trend isn't just for show. The belief is that pleasant breath brings social and even spiritual benefits. There's a whole genre of poetry dedicated to describing lovers' sweetly perfumed kisses. Although nobody's writing odes to halitosis, of course, you don't need to be a sultan to appreciate fresh breath. Apothecaries sell little jars of powder, salt, charcoal, crushed herbs marketed as dental cures, and breath sweeteners. Some are effective. Others are about as useful as chewing sand. But everyone's got an opinion. There's a real sense of dental unupmanship. If you come to Friday prayers with the scent of musk on your breath and a perfectly chewed miswak at your side, people notice. Gossip as ever travels faster than the Tigris in flood season. But let's be real. Even the best routine has limits. Sugar is still rare, but on the rise, and diets feature a lot of dried fruit, honey, and chewy bread that sticks like regret. Dental pain happens. Teeth still loosen and fall out. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later, but the hope is that you at least go down fighting, one fragrant exhale at a time. And when things get bad, you have a local healer or barber to poke, prod, and maybe yank the offending mare, all with a prayer and a handful of clove oil. By evening, as you prepare for the last prayer, you scrub with a miswak one more time. Your mouth tingles. Your breath smells faintly of roses and mystery. And for a moment, you almost believe you're immune to tithikichis. Your teeth may not be perfect. Let's not kid ourselves. Medieval dental science is still medieval, but your oral hygiene is the envy of every traveler from Paris to Samarkand. So, as you lie down and let the city's nighttime songs drift over you, you know your mouth is as clean and perfumed as centuries of tradition and a few ounces of plant stem can make it. The rest, well, that's what faith and maybe a little extra rose water are for. You wake up in a drafty one-room hut. Breakfast is yesterday's porridge, and your dental routine is chewing on sage leaves or rubbing your teeth with powdered charcoal. The gritty taste means it's working, right? If you're noble, maybe you rinse with wine. If you're poor, you're lucky to have teeth at all. Let's stretch and take in the ambiences. It's dawn, and the only thing colder than the wind whistling through the holes in your walls is the welcome from your mother-in-law. The fire went out hours ago, so you fumble into a tunic, shivering as you step barefoot onto a floor that is equal parts straw, mud, and whatever the livestock left behind. Your family is already up, mostly because there's no privacy and because the concept of sleeping hasn't been invented yet. The rooster isn't even awake, but you are, and so is your toothache. Your dental toolkit is as basic as it gets. Forget brushes, pastes, or dental floss. If you're lucky enough to have a little garden or wild meadow nearby, you reach for sage or mint leaves. You pop a few in your mouth and start chewing, letting the rough texture scrub away some of last night's GRL and the faint hope of a better future. Sage isn't just for seasoning. It's considered mildly antiseptic, and for a fleeting moment leaves your mouth tasting less like swamp and more like an herb patch. If you close your eyes, you might almost believe it's working. Almost. For a deeper clean, you reach for powdered charcoal. Maybe you scraped it from last night's fire. Maybe you traded for a scoop from your neighbor. Either way, you dip your finger or a rag into the powder and rub it on your teeth, feeling every grain crunch and grind as it supposedly polishes your enamel. The taste. Imagine licking a chimney and then goggling with hope. Still, people swear by it. After all, it's black. Your teeth are supposed to be white. And somehow that logic is enough. If you belong to the upper crust, your routine gets an upgrade. Nobles, when they're not dodging poisonings or plodding over land, might rinse their mouths with wine or vinegar, believing the acidity will kill whatever's growing between their murs. Sometimes, if you're feeling particularly ambitious and have money to burn, you might rub your gums with salt, honey, or a special blend of imported herbs. This doesn't do much except to convince your friends that you're both rich and really, really into suffering. For most, though, oral hygiene is an exercise in futility. Bread is coarse, ground with millstones that drop as much grit as they do flour. You chew carefully, knowing every bite could come with a bonus chunk of rock. By your 20s, your murs are flatter than a peasant's sense of optimism, and cavities are a fact of life. Medieval records mention tooth worms as the cause of dental pain. Yes, actual worms. The real culprit is bacteria. But since microscopes won't be around for another few centuries, you make do by cursing your luck and hoping the pain fades by next harvest. The social aspect of dental care can't be overstated. Bad breath is everywhere, but you still want to keep it at livable levels. A clove or a piece of cinnamon, if you can get it, might help. Mostly, you try not to breathe directly at your friends or family, which is tough when you all share one small room. Dental suffering is universal. No one expects a full set of teeth by adulthood. And if you do have one, people will assume you made a pact with a local witch. When pain strikes, you might try home remedies. A puss of mashed sage, garlic, or even raw onion, pressed to your jaw and held in place with a scrap of rag. The burning means it's working, or it means you've just invented medieval mouthwash. If nothing else works, it's off to the barber surgeon, who wields tongs and a sense of urgency. Tooth extraction is quick, loud, and occasionally fatal. But hey, at least you'll never have to worry about that tooth again. By nightfall, as you huddle by the fire and chew on whatever's left of dinner, you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a pot. Your smile is stained with charcoal, tinged with defeat, and as authentic as it gets. In the Middle Ages, that's about all anyone can hope for. You go to bed knowing tomorrow will bring another round of sage leaves, charcoal, and with luck, the continued presence of at least one functioning tooth. Welcome to the Renaissance, where beauty is in the eye of the toothless beholder. Dental powders become trendy, made from burnt bread, crushed brick, and sometimes soap. The truly unlucky try brushing with honey, not realizing this is like inviting a cavity to move in and bring friends. Let's set the stage. It's Florence 1520. The air is thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts, the clamor of market sellers, and the odd whiff of the river that nobody likes to talk about. You roll out of your feather mattress, ready to greet the day, or at least survive it. Mirrors have become more common, so now you get to admire the state of your teeth before you even have breakfast. They're not exactly pearly whites, but compared to your medieval ancestors, you're practically dazzling. The first step in your morning routine is to reach for your new status symbol, a tiny box of tooth powder. Unlike the medieval era where the main oral hygiene strategy was wait for a miracle, the Renaissance brings a little more creativity. Apothecaries in every city hawk their own blends. Some use burnt breadcrumbs. Others go for the brute force approach with powdered brick, oyster shells, or even ground alabaster. If you're particularly stylish or wealthy and bored, the idea is to scrub away stains and food particles. Although what you're really doing is slowly eroding your enamel, one brush stroke at a time. You dab your finger or a rough linen cloth into the powder and start scrubbing. The taste like chewing on a construction site. The feeling gritty, satisfying, and a little bit alarming as you wonder whether that crack was the bread or your tooth. Occasionally, someone gets fancy and adds a pinch of soap to the mix. For that extra, my mouth is cleaner than my sole sensation. Soap doesn't exactly taste good, but at least it cuts through the oily residue left by last night's cheese. And if you swallow some, well, now you're clean inside and out. But not everyone sticks to abrasive powders. There's a bizarre belief floating around the upper classes that brushing your teeth with honey is healthy. After all, honey is a known antiseptic, and it tastes way better than ground brick. Unfortunately, this is like trying to clean your kitchen with maple syrup. You might temporarily smell nice, but you've basically laid down the red carpet for a colony of cavities. Still, in the age of sugar's rising popularity and status as a luxury import, honey brushing is as much a flex as a hygiene strategy. For those who want to keep things mini fresh, the Renaissance offers some slightly better alternatives. Rinsing with wine or rose water is in vogue among nobles with the added benefit that your breath might smell like a bouquet or a hangover. Some will chew on fennel seeds or rub their gums with salt, hoping to keep toothaches and bad breath at bay. Others keep a clove tucked discreetly in their cheek during social gatherings, which makes for excellent breath and the mild risk of choking if you start laughing at the wrong time. Despite the innovation, dental problems are rampant. Sugar is making its way into more diets, sneaking into cakes, candied fruit, and even the occasional roast. So tooth decay is on the rise. If you wake up with a toothache, you'll likely visit the local barber surgeon who will offer treatments ranging from herbal pick uses to the ever-popular let's just pull it and see what happens approach. Novocaine isn't a thing, but a splash of strong spirits and a friend with a firm grip on your shoulders is. If you're lucky, you'll get to keep most of your teeth into your 30s. If you're not, you'll just perfect the art of the closed mouth smile. By the time you're ready to face the world, your mouth might taste like a dusty bakery, a perfume garden, or a failed science experiment. But you're clean, sort of awake, definitely, and feeling fancy enough to join the crowd at the piazza, flashing your slightly pink, slightly gritty, but admirably resilient smile. In the Renaissance, that's about as good as it gets. Beautiful enough for a portrait, tough enough for another day, and wise enough to never brush your teeth with honey again. You're in pre-Columbian North America, where various tribes clean their teeth with chewed willow twigs or abrasive pine needles. Sometimes they rub ashes or fine sand onto their teeth for extra scrubbing power, trading mini freshness for a slightly less gritty smile. Let's settle into the rhythm of a day on the plains or in the dense woodlands. Long before European contact, the sun rises quietly over a riverbank, bird song echoing through tall grass and pine forests, and you wake in a lodge or a bark longhouse surrounded by the scents of wood smoke, earth, and cooking corn. Before you even think about breakfast, you reach for a time-honored tool. A slender green twig from a willow or dogwood tree, peeled and softened by night, spent soaking in a clay pot by the hearth. Toothbrushes haven't been invented yet, but you don't need them. Generations before you have discovered that certain plants, especially willow, have natural antibacterial properties. You chew the end of your twig until it splits into soft fibers. then methodically rub it across your teeth and gums. The taste is bitter and astringent, a natural reminder that you're alive and that you probably won't be kissing anyone before rinsing out your mouth. Still, it's effective. The plant sap and fibers help break up food particles and freshen breath, and the process is gentle enough not to wreck your gums. If you're living near a pine forest, you might opt for a different approach. Pine needles gathered in little bundles are used like nature's dental floss. You strip the needles from their branch, roll them between your fingers to soften them, and then use them to poke out stubborn morsels stuck between your teeth. It's not exactly pleasant, but it works, and the subtle piney aroma almost makes up for the occasional jab to the gum line. For some, the resin is even chewed as a sort of ancient chewing gum, helping to clean the teeth and keep the mouth busy while you're out hunting or fishing. When you want a deeper clean, it's time to break out the exfoliants. Ashes left from last night's fire are a popular choice. A pinch rubbed on the teeth can scrub away stains and food. Some people add fine sand ground down between stones until it's almost silky. The taste: imagine licking a campfire and then trying to eat breakfast with a mouthful of beach. But the results are tangible. Teeth feel smoother. Breath isn't so heavy, and you can face the day with a little less self-consciousness. No artificial flavors, just the honest taste of grit and perseverance. Oral hygiene isn't just practical, it's cultural. Stories and traditions are passed down from elders about which plants are best, and the ritual of morning tooth cleaning is often shared with children as a lesson in health, respect for the body, and gratitude for the land. Medicine people may recommend certain herbs for mouth rinses or pick uses for toothaches. Sage, yarrow, or sweetgrass for soothing pain. Spruce or birch resin for infected gums. Remedies might be bitter, but the care is genuine and the knowledge is deep. Of course, there are limitations. Diets rich in fibrous plants, seeds, and dried meat mean teeth work hard and wear down faster than modern standards. Sugar isn't common, but tiny stones sometimes sneak into ground maize or wild rice, adding an unexpected challenge when a toothache strikes. There's no dentist, just the hope that a pus or a wise elder's guidance will see you through. Tooth loss happens, but is met with stoicism, another rite of passage in a life lived close to the earth. Yet for all the grit, there's a kind of beauty in the simplicity. There are no aisles of toothpaste or clinical appointments. Just you, your family, and the world outside your door. You finish your cleaning, rinse with cold stream water, and head out to start your day. Mouth as fresh as willow and pine can manage. If your smile isn't perfect, at least it's honest, shaped by the land, sustained by tradition, and still intact after another night under the stars. Wherever you go in history, you find people poking around in their mouths. Bronze toothpicks, bone picks gold. If you're royalty, in every tavern and banquet hall, someone's going after last night's mutton with a stick, long before the floss dance was a thing. Let's set the scene. You're reclining at a feast in ancient Rome, Viking Scandinavia, or Ming Dynasty China. You've just eaten your body weight in roasted meat, chewy bread, and whatever the local chef could drag out of the river. The only thing more persistent than hunger is the stubborn bit of gristle wedged between your murs. You don't have a toothbrush, floss, or mouthwash. What you do have is history's most reliable tool, the humble toothpick. It's surprisingly universal. Archaeologists have found toothpicks made from bronze, iron, wood, and bone in graves from the Stone Age to the Renaissance. The design doesn't change much, pointy on one end, sometimes with a decorative flourish on the other, occasionally carved into the shape of an animal or a favorite god. In ancient Egypt, wealthy citizens used metal toothpicks, sometimes inlaid with gems, as both a personal grooming device and a subtle status symbol. After all, nothing says I'm above you like picking your teeth with gold. Jump forward to the Roman Empire, and toothpicks become a table staple. After a banquet where you've downed 3 courses and as much wine as your reputation can handle, etiquette demands a post-dinner pick. It's not considered rude. In fact, not picking your teeth is almost suspicious. Why wouldn't you want to keep your mouth ready for the next round of olives or a surprise poetry contest? Romans even carried personal toothpicks, often attached to a ring or tucked into a pouch, so you're never caught unprepared. If you're feeling extra, you might use a little twig of myrtle or olive wood. Aromatic, decorative, and if you believe the old stories, slightly magical. Across the world in ancient China, toothpicks were common enough to be mentioned in poetry and philosophy. Here, they're often made from carved bamboo or bone. Sometimes ornately decorated for the scholar or noble who wants to look stylish, even while tackling a stubborn bit of duck. Toothpicking is seen as a sign of refinement, a way to show you value both your health and your conversation partner's sense of smell. The truly elite might have toothpicks made of jade tucked into embroidered cases and presented as gifts. Then there are the Vikings who, as we know, made a competitive sport out of oral hygiene. A carved bone toothpick tucked into your belt says you're practical, self-reliant, and only slightly obsessed with keeping your smile clear of boar gristle. In crowded longhouses and around smoky fires, everyone picks their teeth. No shame, no subtlety, just good manners. You might even carve runes into your toothpick for good luck. Because if the gods can protect you in battle, surely they can keep your teeth from falling out. And what about the rest of medieval and early modern Europe? In every bustling inn, it's common to see merchants, peasants, and knights alike using a handy sliver of wood or bone after meals. Sometimes the host even provides communal toothpicks, just a big bowl of sharpened sticks for everyone to share. Yes, you're basically sharing mouth germs with half the county, but nobody seems bothered. If you're high status, your picks might be made of silver, and you'll make a show of using them, perhaps while staring directly at the lesser nobles, just to drive home your superiority. Toothpicks outlast empires, plagues, and questionable stews. By the Renaissance, they're even a little bit fashionable. Gold and silver toothpicks become popular gifts among the wealthy, and some are shaped like tiny daggers, just in case you need to defend your mouth or your honor. Portable, practical, and as universally beloved as bread, toothpicks become the original fidget spinner, something to keep your hands busy and your smile just a little less embarrassing. So, next time you reach for a toothpick after dinner, know that you're part of a very old, very relatable tradition. Whether it's bone, bronze, or the last clean cocktail stick at the party, you're keeping history alive, one awkward poke at a time. It's the year 1375, and you're rinsing your mouth with a robust blend of vinegar and wine. Some people mix in salt, hoping for a cleansing burn. Others just spit copiously and call it a day. Mouthwash leaves you with a tangy aftertaste and a possible case of heartburn. Let's paint the picture. You're standing in your one-room cottage or drafty castle bedchamber, blinking sleep out of your eyes and reaching for whatever counts as hygiene in the 14th century. There's no toothpaste, no peppermint rinse, and certainly no fluorescent blue mouthwash in a plastic bottle. You've got whatever's left over from last night's kitchen experiments. A splash of red wine gone sour, a jug of vinegar sharp enough to peel paint, and if you're really feeling creative, a pinch of salt straight from the Lord's private stash. Your teeth ache. Your breath could knock over a small goat, and the day hasn't even started yet. You swirl a mouthful of vinegar, bracing for that moment when your gums tingle and your eyes water. A sensation less mini-fresh and more medieval science experiment. Some say it kills germs. Others say it just kills hope. Either way, your mouth now tastes like salad dressing, and you may or may not have just stripped the last bit of enamel off your MERS. If you're feeling extravagant or just trying to impress your neighbors, you cut your vinegar with a little wine. Not the good stuff, heaven forbid, but whatever's gone sour in a jug, which in medieval Europe is basically all wine all the time. For the truly committed, salt is the must-have addition. It's said to cleanse the mouth and toughen the gums. The actual result is more like licking the bottom of a barrel and then wincing through the aftershocks. Still, Everyone swears by it, mostly because it's cheap, available, and makes you feel like you've done something noble for your dental health before you go back to eating bread as hard as roof tiles. If all of this sounds a little excessive, you can always do what most people do. Just spit. No fancy ingredients, no burning sensation, just a good hearty glob of spit to clear out the mouth before breakfast. Hygiene is largely a public activity in the Middle Ages, and it's not unusual to see people rinsing and spitting on the doorstep in the street, or if you're really fancy, into a designated spittoon by the hearth. In the absence of dental science, the logic is simple. Out of sight, out of mouth. This approach isn't just for peasants. Nobles and royals rinse with wine for that added touch of sophistication. Apothecaries even offer their own mouthwash recipes, sometimes throwing in crushed herbs or a splash of rose water if you've got the plant coin to spare. The result is an electric adventure that ranges from herbal bouquet to barnyard surprise. Medieval mouthwash is less about fighting germs and more about masking the inevitable. With no real understanding of bacteria or plaque, people are mostly battling bad breath with brute force and the occasional prayer. Of course, mouthwash doesn't solve the bigger problems. With diets full of sticky porridge, gritty bread, and dubious stews, your teeth are fighting a losing battle against decay. Toothaches are treated with PICUs, prayers, or a trip to the barber surgeon, whose solution is usually just pull it. There's no sugar-free gum, no dentist gently suggesting you floss, and no little plastic cups for rinsing, just your trusty jug and the vague hope that vinegar is doing something besides burning your tongue. Still, the ritual persists. There's comfort in swishing and spitting, in feeling briefly cleaner, in believing that you're one step ahead of the tooth rot. You finish your rinse, grimace at the lingering tang, and get ready to face the day. Breath tinged with vinegar, teeth slightly cleaner, and stomach lining already filing a complaint. As you trudge out the door, you know your mouth is as clean as it's going to get. Your neighbors are in the same boat. The air is alive with the scent of wine and vinegar. And if anyone's judging your morning routine, it's probably the goats. In the end, medieval mouthwash isn't about perfection. It's about trying every morning to fight back against a world determined to make your mouth as unpleasant as possible. And maybe, just maybe, to keep your smile for one more day. Suddenly, sugar is everywhere if you can afford it. It's sprinkled on everything from pies to porridge, and the dental disaster is immediate. People start using more abrasive powders, but the damage is done. Rotten teeth become a status symbol among the wealthy. Proof: you can afford sweets and survive the consequences. Let's set the scene. It's London, maybe 1650. You wake up to the sound of horses in the street and the sweet, cloying aroma of someone stewing fruit for breakfast. Sugar is the new gold imported in crates guarded with more enthusiasm than the actual crown jewels. Nobles, merchants, and anyone trying to prove they've made it are spooning sugar into everything. A morning slice of bread covered in sugar. Porridge, sugar on top, fish. Why not? If you're rich, your teeth ache not from hard work, but from the sheer abundance of dessert masquerading as every meal. You stumble to the mirror and smile. Or, more accurately, you bare your teeth and hope nobody looks too closely. A row of black pitted stumps is suddenly in vogue among the elite. The whiter your teeth, the poorer people assume you are because sugar, like velvet, is reserved for the highest rungs of society. Queen Elizabeth I herself was infamous for her sugar teeth. Portraits show her with lips firmly closed, but eyewitnesses reported that her smile was less Regal Beacon and more Halloween jack-o'-lantern. Having rotten teeth means you have the money and social clout to ruin them, to fight back against this sticky, delicious invasion. Everyone ups their oral hygiene game, or tries to. Apothecaries and barbers offer new improved tooth powders made from everything under the sun. Burnt bread crusts, brick dust, chalk, even a little cuttlefish bone for extra abrasion. Some add herbs, mint, or a hint of cloves for flavor, while others, less kindly, add salt or vinegar to the mix. You dip your linen rag or hog bristle brush into the powder and scrub away, feeling the grit scrape not only the sugar, but also potentially every last molecule of enamel off your teeth. If you're feeling modern, you might try a concoction of honey and burnt rosemary. If you're desperate, you might even use a sliver of soap, but it's all a losing battle. The sugar works its way into every crack and crevice, feeding an army of bacteria that are absolutely living their best lives in your murs. Toothaches become common among the upper class, and a fashionable dinner party is never complete without someone discreetly excusing themselves to groan in a dark corner. The poor are not immune to dental disaster, but sugar is still too expensive for most peasants. Their teeth, battered by coarse bread and questionable stew, are at least spared the full wrath of sugar's sticky embrace. For them, tooth powder is mostly ash or ground herbs, and a missing tooth is more likely to be from an accident in the fields than a flirtation with candied plums. Of course, when dental disaster strikes, the answer is always dramatic. A visit to the barber surgeon awaits. The same man who will happily shave your beard, lance your boils, and with a strong grip and no anesthesia, yank out your offending tooth. This is usually followed by a generous slug of brandy and several weeks of soup for every meal. There are rumors of ivory teeth, gold wires, and even full sets of dentures for the rich, but none of them work particularly well. Sometimes a fashionable lady will even blacken her remaining teeth with soot just to blend in and avoid suspicion of poverty. Through all this, social status is everything. People trade recipes for tooth powders and breath fresheners, but nobody can really halt the sugar-fueled decay. If you have a full set of teeth in your 30s, you're either incredibly disciplined, shockingly poor, or some kind of wizard. For everyone else, there's always another pastry and another reason to keep your mouth shut in portraits. So, you rinse with wine, scrub with ashes, and pray for the best. In early modern Europe, you might lose your teeth, but at least you gained a story and the sweet taste of progress. Welcome to the court of feudal Japan, where the ideal smile is blackened with iron filings and vinegar. Black teeth are beautiful, but between dye jobs, you're cleaning with rice husk powder and salt, making each day a tiny festival of oral abrasion. Let's imagine you're waking up in an elegant wooden house with sliding doors, tatami mats underfoot, and the distant sound of a bamboo water clock tapping away the hours. You yawn, roll out your futon, and prepare to greet the day. After all, your teeth are a social calling card, and today's card is jet black. In the world of Ohiro, tooth blackening isn't just a fad. It's the ultimate status symbol, a sign of maturity, beauty, and even loyalty. For married women, courtesans, and samurai, a blackened smile means you're cultured, refined, and absolutely not in the market for new suitors. The tooth blackening ritual is nothing, if not elaborate. You or your mate prepare a special mixture called kanizu, a potent brew of iron filings dissolved in vinegar, then mixed with tea or sake for good measure. You swish the concoction, brush it onto your teeth with a small stick, and wait for the magic, or, depending on your taste buds, the horror to happen. The liquid stains your teeth a deep, inky black. The taste is metallic, sharp, and only slightly less offensive than the smell. But beauty is pain, or in this case, beauty is a dental science experiment that's about to last a lifetime. Why black teeth? In an era before fluoride or sugar-filled snacks, white teeth were associated with animalistic instincts. Or worse, the lower classes, black teeth, meant you had the means and leisure to maintain them. And it was said the iron solution protected against decay. Whether it truly helped or simply covered up the evidence is up for debate. But you feel invincible. Your smile is glossy as lacquer and twice as mysterious. But the work doesn't end there. Between dye jobs, you have to keep your teeth clean, at least by the standards of the time. Toothbrushing in feudal Japan is a serious affair. You start with rice husk powder, the byproduct of pooth polishing rice for meals. The fine powder acts as an abrasive, scrubbing away yesterday's fish, pickles, and sticky rice. If you want a little extra grit, you add salt, which leaves your gums tingling and your mouth in a state of perpetual readiness for anything except perhaps dessert. The brush is a small wooden stick or a wisp of twisted fibers. No mint flavor, no gentle foaming action, just the steady scratch and scrape of tradition. Some days you might chew on fragrant herbs, pill, bamboo leaf, or even roasted green tea stems to freshen your breath before facing the scrutiny of the court. Other times, you simply rinse with cold, well water or a weak solution of sake and salt, hoping to wash away the aftertaste of both last night's meal and this morning's kinizu. Dental problems, of course, still happen. Even with iron and vinegar, the diet is heavy on fermented vegetables, salted fish, and chewy rice. Toothaches are treated with herbal pick uses. And if things get truly dire, there's always the village healer ready with a mixture of mysterious roots and strong words of encouragement. Teeth fall out, blackened or not. But if you lose one, you just hope the rest stay in long enough to keep up appearances. Ohiro eventually fades out with the arrival of Western influence. But in your day, the ritual reigns supreme. You flash your gleaming black smile at friends, rivals, and potential in-laws alike, secure in the knowledge that you look, well, absolutely terrifying to anyone not in on the trend. Underneath it all, your teeth are clean, at least as clean as a daily rice husk and salt polish can manage. As you slide open the door and step into a new day, you can't help but feel a sense of pride. Your smile is the ultimate statement piece, mysterious, respected, and a little bit abrasive, just like life in feudal Japan. You're clutching your jaw in a medieval town, hoping for mercy. Instead, you meet the barber surgeon, a man who will clean, extract, and sometimes cauterize your teeth with tools last sanitized during the Crusades. Anesthetic, sure, if you count strong ale and an encouraging slap. Let's imagine the setting. The village square is busy, the air thick with the smell of livestock, fresh bread, and a hint of terror. You limp toward the barber surgeon's shop, cheeks swollen, gums throbbing, and a toothache that feels like an angry demon pounding on your skull. The sign swinging out front promises haircuts, bloodletting, and minor surgeries. Dentistry is not a profession so much as an unpleasant hobby squeezed between bowl cuts and questionable amputations. The waiting area is a bench crowded with fellow sufferers, everyone clutching a sore jaw, swollen cheek, or the irrational hope that this time, it won't be so bad. It will be inside. The barber surgeon himself greets you. He's an intimidating fellow, hands stained with mysterious fluids, eyes twinkling with the kind of glee only found in men who have never had a cavity themselves. His tools are laid out on a table, iron tongs, hook probes, crude files, a half-clean rag, and something that looks suspiciously like a fireplace poker. First, he offers you a stiff drink, ale, wine, or anything with enough kick to make you forget where you are. This is your anesthetic. You're advised to drink fast and think of something pleasant, like a world where toothpaste and Novocaine exist. You oblige, the liquid burning its way down as you sit in a rickety chair that has seen more trauma than a battlefield. The examination is brief. He pokes and prods your mouth with an iron tool, muttering commentary on the state of your dental neglect. Then he makes his recommendation. Extraction. There's no gentle. Let's monitor it. The medieval dental strategy is simple. If it hurts, yank it. Before you can protest, your head is wedged between the knees of an assistant or a helpful neighbor. And the barber surgeon grabs his iron forceps, which according to legend were last properly cleaned when dragons still roamed the land. He jams the forceps around the offending tooth, gives you a hearty, "This will only hurt a lot," and starts pulling. The pain is immediate and cosmic. You squeeze the chair so hard you nearly snap the armrests, and the whole town hears your protest. In seconds or hours, time loses meaning. The tooth is out. Blood gushes. The surgeon shoves a rag in your mouth, and you're offered another drink for the road. But wait, sometimes extraction isn't enough. If infection has set in or the wound refuses to clot, it's time for cauterization. The barber surgeon grabs his iron poker, thrusts it into the hearth, and once it's glowing, presses it to your bleeding gum. The smell is unforgettable. You may faint, which is the best outcome, or you may just scream so loudly that church bells tremble. And yet, in the absence of real medical knowledge, this grim routine sort of works. The tooth is gone. The infection is less likely to spread, and you might even survive to tell the tale if you avoid the dreaded dry socket, which in medieval times is just another way of saying you're about to see a lot of saints in your dreams. If you're lucky, you'll heal and have a great story for the tavern. If not, you'll be back in the chair with a new problem and fewer teeth. As you stumble out one tooth lighter and the taste of blood lingering, you realize this is medieval dentistry. Fast, brutal, and built for a world where suffering is just a part of daily life. The only real after-hour is more ale, some herbal pick uses, and a promise to chew on the other side of your mouth for the foreseeable future. Good luck smiling at least until the next toothache. Not everyone trusts in powders and twigs. In many cultures, you find prayers, charms, and rituals to keep toothaches away. From incantations in Babylon to Saint Apollonia medals in medieval Europe, sometimes the best you can hope for is supernatural intervention. Let's drift back to a time before antibiotics, before toothbrushes, before anyone could Google what's this weird pain in my mouth. Instead, you're in Babylon, surrounded by clay tablets, bustling markets, and a family that believes a sore tooth is the work of demons or displeased gods. The first line of defense isn't a dental appointment. It's an appeal to the supernatural. Got a toothache? You're not heading to the medicine chest. You're headed to the temple. In ancient Mesopotamia, a toothache might be explained as a worm gnawing inside your mare. The logical solution, an incantation. A priest or healer recites a series of sacred words, perhaps while burning aromatic herbs or waving a carved amulet over your throbbing jaw. If you're lucky, the ritual includes a pus made from dates and onions wrapped in linen and pressed to your cheek. But mostly you're relying on the gods. Any god who seems likely to care about your teeth today. At the very least, the ceremony is a distraction from the pain. And if it works, you have a new family story for the next festival. As centuries roll by, the magical approach only gains strength. In ancient Egypt, special amulets are crafted with images of protective gods. Maybe Bez, the dwarf god of household blessings, or Tauret, the hippopotamus goddess of childbirth and general protection. If you're a child, you might have your first lost tooth buried in the floor of the house or offered to the river, accompanied by a whispered spell for strong adult teeth. Everyone knows the best way to keep your teeth healthy is to stay on the good side of whatever spirits are lurking nearby. Fast forward to ancient Greece and Rome, and the supernatural toolkit expands. Now you have written spells on papyrus, little charms made from animal bones or precious metals, and the occasional hair from a lucky dog, because why not? Toothaches are blamed on angry ancestors, bad omens, or even curses from jealous neighbors. If you're desperate, you might recite a formula backwards under a full moon, tie a colored thread around your wrist, or carry a wolf's tooth as a protective talisman. At this point, you're less concerned with evidence and more concerned with the pain going away. By the Middle Ages, the spiritual approach has reached peak creativity. Enter Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of dentistry. According to legend, she suffered such horrific dental torture that she became the go-to-heavenly advocate for anyone with a toothache. Medieval Europeans wear tiny medals stamped with her image, light candles in her honor, and murmur prayers any time their gums start throbbing. You might even see someone tie a toothache charm to a tree in hopes of transferring their pain to the bark. Sometimes there's a ritual involving bread or a whispered verse from the Bible. In an age before penicillin, you'll try anything once and probably twice just to be sure. Children, of course, get the best end of the bargain. In some cultures, when a baby's first tooth falls out, it's carefully placed under the pillow for a friendly spirit or fairy to collect. In others, it's thrown onto the roof or buried in the garden with a special wish for strength and health. It's the ancient precursor to the tooth fairy, a magical bargain that promises good fortune in exchange for your dental cast-offs. Of course, none of this actually cures a cavity or soothes an abscess, but it offers hope and a sense of control. When medicine can't help and painkillers are centuries away, the idea that you can bribe, beg, or bargain with the supernatural is oddly comforting. Plus, it makes for fantastic storytelling on long, sleepless nights. So whether you're clutching a lucky charm, whispering to St. Apollonia, or casting your baby tooth in a garden, you're part of a timeless tradition, trying anything and everything to keep the dental demons at bay. And if all else fails, at least you have a good story. Because in the world of ancient oral care, magic is sometimes the best medicine you've got. Fast forward to Ming Dynasty, China, where the world's first recognizable toothbrush appears. It's a bamboo handle with hog bristles. It scrubs well, but comes with the bonus risk of oral splinters and the lingering taste of barnyard. Let's open your eyes to a bustling Chinese city in the 1400s. Outside, street vendors hawk noodles, scholars debate Confucian philosophy, and artisans craft everything from lacquer boxes to, yes, dental hygiene tools. You wake up on a hard, lacquered platform bed, and before you do anything else, you reach for your prized possession, a toothbrush that looks suspiciously familiar to modern eyes, at least from a distance. Up close, it's more farmyard innovation than spa day at the Ritz. Your toothbrush handle is made of smooth bamboo split and carved by hand with a tuft of hog bristles wedged tightly into a hole at one end. You've seen simpler times, but this is the height of progress. Brushing no longer means chewing a twig or rubbing powder on your gums with a rag. It means wielding a purpose-built cleaning device, the latest must-have accessory for anyone who cares about their teeth, social status, or not getting quietly judged at dinner. You dip your brush into a ceramic bowl of tooth powder, maybe a blend of salt, crushed medicinal herbs, dried mint, and a pinch of ginseng for stamina. The bristles, coarse and stubborn, scrape across your teeth with a thoroughness that's equal parts invigorating and slightly alarming. The first few swipes taste distinctly of barnyard, with undertones of something you're pretty sure is last week's turnip. Still, you press on, determined to chase away yesterday's garlic dumplings and keep your mouth respectable for the day's business. There are hazards, of course. Sometimes a bristle comes loose mid-brush, and you spend a fun few minutes trying to fish it out of your murs. Sometimes the bamboo splinters, leaving you with a souvenir wedged in your gum line. But compared to the alternatives, rubbing ash on your teeth, or hoping a mouthful of mint leaves will do the trick. This is luxury. Toothbrushes become prized items. Wealthier families commission custom handles with painted designs, silk tassels, or even precious metal inlays. Children are taught to brush early, and parents keep a watchful eye to make sure no one skips out, especially on festival days when sweets and sticky rice cakes make dental disaster nearly guaranteed. Public bathhouse sometimes offer communal brushes. Don't ask. And vendors in the market hawk bristle replacements for those whose morning enthusiasm has once again bested the brush. Beyond the home, scholars and physicians extol the benefits of proper brushing. Medical treatises describe the importance of keeping the teeth free from wind and dampness. Ancient catch-alls for everything from cavities to chronic halitosis. Advice columns written in beautiful calligraphy recommend brushing after every meal and following up with a rinse of cool tea or herbal broth. If you're particularly careful, you'll finish with a chew on a fragrant twig or a mouthful of camphor just to keep your breath in harmony with the seasons. Yet, as with all things, the results are a little mixed. Bristles are aggressive, and sometimes you find your gums bleeding, your enamel thinning, and your family debating whether the faint barnyard aroma is you or the neighbor's pig. But still, in the grand sweep of dental history, you are ahead of your time. No more fumbling with feathers or picking your teeth with a stick. You have a brush, a tool designed for the express purpose of cleaning your teeth and announcing to all of Ming Dynasty society that you care about your smile. So you spit out the last traces of powder, give your bamboo handle a quick rinse, and admire your handiwork in a polished bronze mirror. Your teeth are cleanish. Your breath is at least mildly herbal, and your gums are for now mostly intact. As you step out into the busy street, toothbrush tucked proudly in your sash, you know you're ready for whatever the day and dinner has to throw at you. Welcome to the future, Ming Dynasty style. By age 30, most historical humans have lost a few teeth. If you're rich, you fill the gaps with gold wire or carved bone. If not, you just whistle when you talk and hope no one invents Instagram for another 1,000 years. Let's ease into your daily routine. Somewhere between the Middle Ages and the early 1800s, you wake up, run your tongue over your teeth, and make a mental inventory. There's a new gap where your favorite Mary used to be. Congratulations, you've unlocked another badge in the historic survival game. Missing teeth. Dental hygiene is still a pipe dream, and daily life is not gentle on your enamel. Between the grit in your bread, the sugar in your fancy new tea, if you're lucky, and the absence of fluoride, your teeth are dropping out faster than your motivation on a Monday morning. If you're among the lucky few born into money or privilege, you don't have to go through life looking like you lost a fight with a bag of rocks. The wealthy have options. The gold standard literally is filling the gaps with wires of precious metal. Gold is malleable, and if you can afford it, a gold wire can be strung through the remains of your teeth to keep them from shifting and to let you chew with something approaching dignity. Sometimes you even get little decorative flourishes. An engraved pattern here, a discreet gemstone there, the dental equivalent of flexing your wealth and taste. Feeling even more extra? Enter the world of early dentures. These aren't the discreet acrylic plates of today. No, you get carved bone, ivory, or if you're particularly unlucky, somebody else's teeth. Yes, the teeth transplant was a thing. Pull a few teeth from a servant, a battle casualty, or a poor soul who could really use a few coins, and voila, instant smile. Provided you can ignore the unsettling feeling of someone else's murs rattling around your mouth. George Washington's famous dentures. Spoiler, they were not made of wood, but a gruesome mix of animal teeth, human teeth, and ivory. Nothing says founding father like a full set of mystery chompers. But for most people, tooth loss isn't a crisis. It's just life. You whistle a little more when you talk. You chew on the other side. If you lose a front tooth, you might get creative with a bit of wax, a pebble, or a discreet tuft of fabric stuffed into the gap when you need to look your best. Medieval artists rarely painted people smiling. And now you know why. Open-mouthed grinning is not fashionable when half your teeth have retired early. Of course, there are social implications. Among the peasantry, missing teeth are shrugged off as the cost of doing business. You share a laugh about the latest gap in your smile, or trade stories about how many teeth you've lost to that one guy's legendary stew. In some places, tooth loss is even fashionable. In 18th century France, blackened or gapped teeth among the upper classes were a status symbol, proof you could afford sugar, and thus decay. Nothing says rich like flashing a mouthful of gold, ivory, or stylish emptiness at your neighbor. Speech is affected, but life goes on. You develop a new whistle, perfect for calling in the chickens or alerting your friends at the pub. You adapt your diet. Fewer hard nuts, more soft bread and stews. When a tooth finally gives up, you simply spit it out, mutter a curse, and carry on with your chores. Pain is handled with home remedies, herbal pick uses, strong spirits, or the time-honored tradition of pretending it doesn't hurt until it stops. If you're particularly bold, you might carve a replacement tooth out of wood or bone, wedge it into place, and hope it stays put during dinner. These primitive dentures rarely fit well, and sometimes make things worse. But hey, it's better than spitting out your food in mixed company. So, as you settle in for the evening, gum sore and smile a little more lopsided than last year, you accept it with a kind of resigned humor. No Instagram, no pressure. In the world before dental implants, everyone's mouth is a little unique, a little battered, and if you're lucky, still good enough for a laugh at the local tavern. It's the era of Shakespeare, and nobles can't get enough of sugar on fruit and wine, even on their vegetables. The result, black rotting teeth become so common among the elite that Elizabeth and smile is basically a polite way to say yikes. Let's picture the scene. London, late 1500s. The air is thick with smoke. The muddy temps, and just a hint of roasted meat wafting from the kitchens of grand manor houses. You wake up on a feather mattress, ready to embrace a day of power, politics, and if you're lucky, breakfast sweets, sugar, recently imported from the farthest corners of the world, is the status symbol of the moment. If you're truly posh, it goes on everything. Strawberries, roast chicken, and because no one's telling you, no peas. A new day brings a new excuse to eat something sweet. You reach for candied orange peels, marzipan, or spiced wine loaded with honey and sugar. Your cook proudly serves up pies, jellies, and even sugar-dusted lettuce. The only thing whiter than your ruffled collar is the mountain of refined sugar on your plate. Everyone around you is equally obsessed, from poets to politicians, all believing that sugar is practically medicinal, a treat for the body and soul. But here's the catch. The more sugar you eat, the worse your teeth become. By the time you're 30, your mouth looks like a map of shipwrecks. Molars blackened by decay, incisors crumbling at the edges, and gums that are perpetually swollen or bleeding. Portraits of Elizabeth and nobles often show them tight-lipped, not because they're mysterious, but because nobody wants to see what's lurking behind that dignified smile. To combat the disaster, you turn to the best practices of the time. Your housekeeper brings in tooth powders, ground oyster shells, burnt bread, brick dust, or even a touch of sullen herbs. If you're very forward-thinking, you have a toothbrush imported from China, bristly and only slightly less abrasive than a hedgehog. Most people just use a rag, their finger, or a bit of chewed root to polish their teeth, hoping the effort will slow down rot, if not stop it entirely. Breath fresheners are another must. Chewing on cloves, cinnamon sticks, or dried rosemary before social gatherings is expected, especially at court. Nothing ruins a dramatic monologue at the Globe Theater quite like a whiff of Elizabethan dragon breath. If you have access to fancy perfumes, you might rinse your mouth with rose water, orange blossom, or even a splash of wine. At best, it's a temporary fix. At worst, it just adds a floral note to the inevitable cloud of halitosis. Still, if you're wealthy enough, you don't really mind. Rotten teeth are the badge of a true connoisseur. Visitors to court even record seeing Queen Elizabeth herself with black, decaying teeth. A fact that instead of sparking concern only encourages more sugar consumption among the ambitious. If you're unlucky and a tooth becomes unbearable, the local barber surgeon stands ready with his trusty tongs, a strong grip, and the promise of relief minus the tooth, plus a probable infection. For commoners, things aren't much better. They may have less sugar, but their bread is coarse. Their hygiene is limited, and their remedies are even more primitive. A missing tooth or two is expected. What sets you apart is how elegantly you disguise the gaps. Some people stuff them with bits of cloth, others with soft wax or a handy pebble. Laughter is universal, but open-mouthed grins are rare, unless you're showing off your new sugar smile. As twilight falls and you prepare for the latest banquet or play, you dab your lips, freshen your breath with a clove, and practice the perfect enigmatic half-smile. Blackened teeth may not look pretty, but in Elizabethan England, they're the ultimate flex, a secret sign that you're rich, refined, and just a little bit ridiculous. Welcome to the colonies, where oral hygiene involves rubbing your teeth with brick dust, wood ash, or on adventurous days, a bit of bacon rind. The flavor is unforgettable. The result's debatable, but at least it's American ingenuity at work. Let's step onto a chilly morning in a colonial village where the streets are muddy. The air is filled with the distant clang of a blacksmith, and everyone seems perpetually short on sleep. Your day begins with a heavy wooden door creaking open, and you shuffle out of bed, perhaps after dreaming of England or just a breakfast. As you greet the new world, you also greet your new dental routine, which is less fresh, minty tingle, and more frontier survival challenge. First up, the brick dust. You grab a small piece of red brick from beside the hearth and use a knife to scrape off a fine powder. This you sprinkle onto a damp cloth or your finger and rub vigorously across your teeth. Why brick? Because it's gritty, it's handy, and best of all, it's cheaper than anything imported from Europe. The feeling is unmistakable. Each pass grinds away at whatever is stuck to your enamel, as well as a fair bit of the enamel itself. The taste, let's call it rustic mineral, with a hint of probably not FDA approved. If you're lucky, the dust is fine. If not, you get a little crunch with your cleaning and maybe even a surprise sliver of brick to pick out at lunch. If you don't fancy brick, wood ash is always within reach. The fireplace has left you with a bucket full of fine gray powder, perfect for scooping onto your cloth. Ash has a basic pH and in theory neutralizes mouth acids. In practice, it tastes like last night's fire. Smoky, bitter, and oddly nostalgic for those with a taste for campfire cuisine. Still, rubbing it onto your teeth provides that satisfying, I did something feeling, and it's marginally better than nothing. For the truly daring or the slightly hungover, there's the bacon rind. After frying up a slab for breakfast, you might take the still greasy rind and give your teeth a good rub. Maybe it helps polish. Maybe it just makes your mouth taste like breakfast all day long. In a world before toothpaste advertisements, the line between oral hygiene and leftovers is thin. Some even say the fat helps loosen debris between teeth, though it also leaves your breath smelling like a combination of cured pork and desperation. Colonial Americans weren't without their own homegrown remedies. Herbalists and folk healers would sometimes recommend sage or mint leaves for a refreshing scrub. And if you were lucky enough to have an apple tree, chewing the fruit's fibrous flesh was as close as you got to a natural toothbrush. There's even evidence that some settlers tried using salt or rough wool for extra scrubbing power, or the occasional clove to freshen breath before heading to church. Of course, the options improved with money and connections. If you could afford to import tooth powder from London, you might get a blend of chalk, salt, or even early tooth soap in a little tin. For most, though, dental care meant whatever you could scourge, scrape, or slice from your own kitchen. Still, cavities, abscesses, and loose teeth were facts of life. When pain set in, there were two options. Try a puss of herbs, or visit the local blacksmith who, when not shoeing horses, might also have a set of pliers for extractions. Either way, a strong shot of homemade whiskey was the closest you got to anesthesia, and recovery meant a lot of soup and quiet prayers that you wouldn't need to repeat the experience soon. So, as you finish your morning routine, spit out a mouthful of brick dust, and tuck into a hearty breakfast. Take pride in your American resourcefulness. In colonial times, a smile wasn't measured by its brightness, but by its resilience. If you managed to keep most of your teeth, you were doing just fine. If not, you simply perfected your closed-mouth grin and waited for the next ship to bring something better. One day, maybe that'll be toothpaste. But for now, bacon rind will have to do. Here's a secret. Most people throughout history didn't worry much about their teeth. Social survival trumped dental survival. Bad breath was universal. Toothaches were expected, and everyone just accepted that dental pain was part of growing up. Let's travel back to a time when mirrors were rare. Dental appointments were science fiction, and your biggest concern in the morning was surviving breakfast, not whether your smile could sell whitening strips. For most of human history, clean teeth were the stuff of legend, like dragons or reliable Wi-Fi. What really mattered was keeping your status, your livestock, and ideally your limbs. If you were an average medieval villager, your personal hygiene routine was already on thin ice. You might bathe once a month if you were lucky. And if the river wasn't frozen, and teeth simply didn't make the top 10 on your things to worry about list, you were more likely to inspect your boots for holes in your gums for swelling. Social rules were strict, but they didn't include sparkling breath. The scent of garlic and onions on everyone's breath was just background noise, the medieval version of elevator music. There were more pressing issues. Food shortages, feudal taxes, plague outbreaks, and the constant nagging threat of being conscripted into a plague war you didn't start and wouldn't survive. Dental pain was a given, like bad weather or nosy neighbors. Kids got their first toothaches almost as soon as their first chores. If your teeth hurt, you didn't run to an expert. You just did what everyone else did, chewed on the opposite side, and hoped for the best. The noble classes fared only a little better. While they had access to imported powders, sticks, and the occasional novelty from the Silk Road, most efforts at dental care were half-hearted at best. A mouthful of black, decaying teeth wasn't unusual for a wealthy courtier by the age of 30. If anything, it was a status symbol, especially when sugar became fashionable. And since nobody had invented Instagram, there was no incentive to flash a full white smile at the world. Most portraits from centuries past show people with closed mouths, not out of modesty, but out of self-preservation. For the truly desperate, there were always prayers and potions. You might tie charm around your neck, bury your child's baby teeth in the garden, or recite a prayer to Saint Apollonia, patron saint of toothaches. But nobody expected miracles. If you lost a tooth, you spat it out, shrugged, and got on with your day. If you lost several, you learned to keep your mouth shut during arguments, lest your opponent count your dental defeats. Halitosis, meanwhile, was democratic. Everyone had it. Peppermint was rare, and most breath-freshening attempts involved strong herbs, wine, or just hoping your conversation partner had an equally pungent lunch. In some cultures, a bit of aromatic resin or clove might be chewed for a special occasion, but the effect was fleeting. Morning breath was more like life breath. The good news, since everyone suffered, nobody noticed or cared if your breath could stun a goat at 20 paces. Children, too, learned early that toothaches were part of growing up. Parents might offer a homemade pus, a swig of something strong, or a whispered folk remedy. But nobody lost sleep over a lost tooth. In fact, the tooth fairy's earliest predecessors were just as likely to toss the tooth into a fire or bury it under the hearth as reward you with a coin. In the end, the myth of clean teeth is just that, a myth. History's people weren't obsessed with oral hygiene, and the Hollywood smile would have seemed alien, even suspicious. Survival was hard enough without worrying about tarta. So, you live with what you had. You laugh with your mouth mostly closed. And you saved your energy for bigger problems, like what's for dinner or whether there will be dinner at all. So tonight, as you brush, floss, and inspect every tooth in the mirror, remember, for most of human history, nobody really cared. They had other things to survive. And in a world without dentists, maybe that's exactly as it should have been. You're desperate to clean between your teeth, but floss hasn't been invented. You improvise with horsehair, silk threads, or the fibers of tough grass. It's not effective, but it gives you something to do during long sermons. Let's drift into the world of historical improvisation, where necessity is the mother of dental invention, and your teeth are the battlefield. It's a lazy afternoon in a medieval village, a Roman villa, or a bustling Ottoman bazaar. Take your pick. You just finished a meal heavy on bread, tough meat, and grains that seem personally committed to wedging themselves in the tightest spaces possible. There's not a plastic floss pick in sight. Instead, you look to your immediate environment, because oral hygiene is a lot more make do and men than 2 minutes with mint. Horsehair is a favorite, especially if you're living in a time or place where horses are as common as dandelions. You pluck a long strand from your trusty steed's tail or mane, give it a rinse hopefully, and thread it carefully between your teeth. The feeling is, let's call it, rustic. Horsehair is strong, wiry, and about as gentle as scrubbing your gums with a violin bow. Still, it does the job. If the job is moving that bit of gristle from one tooth to another, the flavor, especially on a warm day, is something you'll never forget. No matter how much wine you rinse with afterward, if you're of a wealthier persuasion or happen to live along the Silk Road, you might have access to silk thread. Now, we're talking ancient luxury floss. Silk is softer, more flexible, and less likely to make your gums bleed like you just lost a jewel. The only problem, silk is expensive, and most people would rather save it for something that shows, like clothing or bribing a bureaucrat, than for poking around their MERS. Still, if you want to impress a neighbor or just have a few coins to spare, silk floss is the ancient equivalent of a spa day for your teeth. For the truly creative or desperate tough grass fibers make a passable substitute. You pull a blade of grass, split it with your fingernail, and work it back and forth between your teeth. The experience is part dental care, part survival training, and always a reminder of why you wish someone would hurry up and invent modern floss. It's not particularly effective, but at least you're making an effort. Bonus: if you get bored during a long church service or a tedious council meeting, you can always pick out a fresh strand and go to work, pretending you're deeply absorbed in thought. In ancient China and India, early forms of dental floss included everything from silk to bamboo fibers. Scholars and physicians sometimes recommended threading between the teeth to remove food debris and evil humors. Ancient texts advise using fine linen threads, or even the inner bark of certain trees, for a superior clean. Meanwhile, in Europe, people favored the anything goes method. A feather quill, a sliver of wood, or whatever thread happened to come off their sleeve. It wasn't just about hygiene either. Toothpicking and makeshift flossing had a social element. Picking your teeth after a meal was completely normal and often a sign of refinement, just so long as you didn't accidentally flick food at your neighbor. Flossing became a sort of idle habit, something to occupy your hands during downtime. If you were at a banquet, in church, or enduring another epic story from your grandfather, pulling out a bit of horsehair or thread signaled that you were resourceful, attentive, and maybe just a little preoccupied with personal comfort. Of course, the results were mixed. Without the benefit of waxed, ultra-smooth dental floss, gums often paid the price. Bleeding was common, and more than one unlucky soul ended up with a thread permanently lodged in a tricky molar gap. But in a world where most people just shrugged and accepted a mouthful of leftovers, you could at least claim you tried. So, as you finish cleaning between your teeth with your chosen strand, take a moment to appreciate the innovation and the patience of your ancestors. They might not have had dental picks, ultrasonic cleaners, or even toothbrushes that didn't double as farm equipment, but they knew how to get by one strand at a time through boredom, sermons, and all the odds. Just before modern toothpaste appears, people in the 18th and 19th centuries start using homemade pastes of chalk, salt, and even soap. Some add peppermint oil for a little luxury. Results may vary, and by vary, we mean bleeding gums for everyone. Let's take a slow walk through a creaky Georgian townhouse or a bustling Victorian flat where mornings begin with less sparkle and more scraping. Your mirror is a small polished disc of brass or glass, and you lean in to get a look at your teeth, maybe not white, but still holding the line against total anarchy. Breakfast can wait because it's time to mix up your daily dose of toothpaste, a term used loosely and with a certain amount of 18th century optimism. You start with chalk, the mainstay of homemade pastes. Scrape it from a handy lump or buy it from the apothecary. Grind it fine. And if you're lucky, avoid any particularly large enamel shredding chunks. It's cheap, it's available, and it has that delightful eating a piece of limestone vibe. Then you reach for the salt. The logic here is sound. Salt is abrasive. It cleans, and it's supposed to toughen up your gums. In reality, it burns, stings, and makes your mouth feel like you've been goggling with ocean water during a storm. The aftertaste stays with you, a lingering reminder of your commitment to self-improvement. Some people, inspired by the miracles of industrial progress, add a little soap to the mix. Yes, soap. If you're especially forward-thinking or just gullible, you believe a dab of soap not only kills mouth germs, but also leaves your breath cleaner than ever. Of course, you may wind up foaming at the mouth, and swallowing any of it is a one-way ticket to the nearest chamber pot. Still, soap toothpaste finds its fans, if only because the alternatives are so bleak. Those with money and a taste for the finer things sometimes drop in a splash of peppermint oil or powdered charcoal. Peppermint adds a fleeting sensation of freshness, a brief moment where you can close your eyes and pretend you're living in a world with Listerine. Charcoal, meanwhile, gives your teeth a matte black sheen, at least until you rinse it off, and then leave your gums looking like you just tried to chew a fireplace. The brush you use might be an early boar bristle toothbrush imported at considerable expense, and likely to lose bristles in your mouth at the most inconvenient moments. For the less fortunate, it's still a rag, a stick, or even a finger. Technique varies, but enthusiasm is universal. Everyone scrubs with gusto, convinced that a little pain means progress. If your gums don't bleed, you're not doing it right. Despite these heroic efforts, dental problems persist. Cavities, abscesses, and missing teeth are still the norm. And a trip to the dentist, now a distinct and terrifying profession, involves pliers, no anesthesia, and a bill that could ruin your month. But at least you tried. People swap recipes for pastes and powders, debate the merits of chalk versus burnt bread, and every once in a while, someone shows up with an imported jar of tooth cream from Paris or London. The envy of the neighborhood. If you're a trendsetter, you might even experiment with strange new ingredients. Baking soda, a revelation for some. Ground ginger, spicy, dubious, or calcium carbonate from oyster shells. Results are mixed, ranging from mildly less grim to my gums look like they lost a bar fight. But for a moment, as you rinse your mouth and taste the fresh, stinging tang of salt and peppermint, you feel like a pioneer carving out a future one scrub at a time. So you dry your mouth, put away your paste, and get on with your day, smiling with whatever teeth you have left. In the world before fluoride and modern dentistry, clean was always relative, and bleeding gums were just a sign you cared a little too much. Eventually, every historical mouth reaches its breaking point. There are no root canals, no Novocaine. When the pain gets too much, you visit the local barber, grip the chair, and say goodbye to another mare. On the bright side, the Gap gives you a new whistle for folk songs. Let's settle in for a sobering reality check. It's a chilly morning, and you're huddled in a cottage, a bustling town square, or maybe even the corner of a dimly lit castle. For days, maybe weeks, your tooth has been throbbing, sending sharp shocks through your jaw every time you chew. You tried everything. Rinsing with vinegar, chewing on sage, rubbing your gums with honey and salt, even offering a prayer or two to St. Apollonia, the unofficial patron of dental disaster. Nothing has worked, and now the pain has spread from your tooth to your ear, your head, your patience, and your will to live. In every historical era, the final solution is the same. Extraction. Just pull it, someone says, as if this is the most reasonable suggestion, since let's not bathe for a month. You make your way reluctantly to the local barber surgeon. He's not just your hair guy. He's the town's multi-purpose practitioner, offering haircuts, leaching, minor surgery, and for a fee, tooth extraction with tools that look more suited for the stable than your mouth. The waiting area is a spectacle. Farmers, bakers, even the town crier, all wincing in solidarity. The dental chair is just a wooden stool, sometimes with a sturdy armrest for you to grip, other times with a willing assistant to hold your head steady before anesthetics. Pain relief comes in the form of strong ale, whiskey, or if you're lucky, something to bite down on beside your own tongue. The barber gives you a sympathetic look or not, and selects a tool from his kit: iron forceps, a curved hook, maybe even a hammer if things get desperate. You sit, clutching the chair as if it's about to float away, and brace yourself. The barber takes a look, pokes your gum, and offers advice that is both practical and deeply unhelpful. Try not to squirm. With a grunt and a twist, he goes to work. The pain is sharp, blinding, and absolutely memorable. If you're fortunate, the tooth comes out clean. If not, he may have to go back in again and again until the offending bit is out, leaving you with a mouthful of blood and a brand new gap. For a moment, you're in agony. Then, relief. The dull, endless throb is gone, replaced by the new pain of extraction, which at least has the dignity of a clear ending. A rag is pressed to your gum. You're handed another drink and told to take it easy, as if you were planning on running a marathon with half your jaw missing. There's no afterart, no antibiotics, no stitches, just the hope that the wound will close, and that whatever was making your tooth hurt doesn't come back as something worse. Now you're the proud owner of a new space in your smile. You might whistle when you talk, sip soup with a little less dignity, or find that certain foods become off-limits. Still, life moves on. Tooth loss is so common that nobody bats an eye. In some cultures, the new gap is almost a badge of honor, a reminder that you survived not just the pain, but the cure. Children watch and learn, already preparing themselves for the day their own teeth will betray them. There are jokes about barber's luck and how the local surgeon has a collection of more teeth than actual hair. For some, there's even a little pride in counting up your battle scars at the local tavern. And yes, that new gap in your mouth is excellent for whistling, gossiping, and if you're clever, playing a tune nobody else can. So, you wipe your mouth, pay the barber, and get on with your day. No Instagram smiles, no dazzling veneers, just you. A slightly emptier mouth and the knowledge that in a world without root canals or modern painkillers, this is as good as it gets. In history, sometimes survival means letting go one tooth at a time. It's sunrise in ancient Mesopotamia, and your significant other is staring at you with the hopeful eyes of someone who wants you to try anything, literally anything, for your dragon breath. Luckily, a street vendor sells cardamom pods, fennel seeds, and clumps of resin marketed as ancient breath mints. You dutifully chew, hoping to mask the mutton aftermath of last night's feast. The effect temporary, the flavor like spicy candle wax, but in a world without tic-tacs, popping seeds between your teeth is as fresh as it gets and only slightly hazardous to your fillings, if you still have any. Let's slip into the ancient world where the concept of mini-fresh is still a few thousand years away. But social survival absolutely depends on doing something, anything about your breath. You wake up, stretch, and immediately realize that last night's garlicky stew and mutton have staged an overnight coup in your mouth. There's no toothpaste, no Listerine, and the only thing close to a breath strip is a bit of tree resin pried from a stall on the market. The people of Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and Greece all shared a universal fear: morning breath. They just had different weapons. The street vendors hawk a rainbow of aromatic seeds. Cardamom, fiery and fragrant. Fennel, sweet and licoricey. Anise, a divisive favorite. And coriander, which tastes mostly of something. You buy a handful, pop a few in your mouth, and immediately experience a burst of flavor that can only be described as intense hope, followed by mild regret. Chewing these seeds was less about actual dental care and more about not offending your family, your boss, or the high priest during morning prayers. If you're feeling daring, you grab a lump of frankincense or myrrh resin, actual tree sap hardened into little nuggets. These are ancient luxury breath fresheners, usually reserved for the well-to-do or those with a desperate need to impress at temple gatherings. You bite down, chew, and release a cloud of herbal aroma, so strong you can almost believe you're clean. The reality, you're left with bits of resin stuck in your myrrhs and a flavor reminiscent of spiced candle with a lingering aftertaste of forest floor. Not all attempts at freshening breath were so palatable. In ancient India and Persia, people might chew battle nut wrapped in a battle leaf mixed with lime and spices. The resulting red paste freshened the breath, but it also stained teeth and gums. A vibrant shade of yikes. Still, it was better than being known for breath that could wilt papyrus scrolls at 20 paces. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks and Romans also joined in the breath battle. The well-groomed Roman might finish his meal with mastic gum, an early chewing gum made from the sap of the mastic tree. Mastic was chewed for hours, releasing a piney, slightly medicinal taste that could mask the after effects of a feast, at least until the next course. Wealthy Greeks chewed on aromatic roots, while the less fortunate did what they could with whatever seeds or dried herbs were on hand. Of course, none of these efforts were foolproof. Chewing on cloves or anise might briefly overwhelm the mutton, but it didn't do much for the long-term health of your teeth. Toothaches, abscesses, and gum disease still lurked just below the surface. Undeterred by your commitment to smelling slightly like a spice merchant storeroom, there was also a certain social etiquette to breath freshening. If you were expecting important company or an audience with someone above your pay grade, you make extra effort. Chew a few more seeds. Maybe even rinse your mouth with wine or herbal infusions. Some cultures shared breath fresheners at the table, passing a little bowl of seeds at the end of a meal as a kind of ancient dessert. Forget after dinner mints. Here, everyone's crunching on coriander and pretending not to notice the person in the corner with the garlic breath. And so, as you wander the market, smile at your loved ones, or mumble a prayer at the temple, you do it with breath that's at least temporarily improved. It's not perfect, but it's honest. You're armed with the best spices the ancient world can offer. Your smile a little more confident, even if deep down you know that the real secret to good breath is a little distance, a lot of luck, and a shared understanding that everyone's just doing their best with what they've got. And so as you drift through the final moments of this journey, one filled with twigs, burnt bones, and breath so fierce it could clear a medieval banquet hall, take a slow, deep breath through your nose. For historical accuracy, tonight you have wandered through the world's most peculiar bathroom cabinets, surviving abrasive powders, questionable mouthwashes, and dental routines that were equal parts creativity and quiet despair. Remember, our ancestors may not have had whitening strips, but they had resilience. They stared down a dinner of hard bread and turnips, survived the centuries with only a frayed twig or a scoop of sand, and somehow managed to laugh, kiss, and carry on, often with most of their teeth still attached. They endured the agony of toothaches without anesthesia, suffered the indignity of breath so legendary it became myth, and invented the just ignore it approach to oral health. So tonight, as you tuck yourself into a clean bed, no livestock, no rush stuffed mattress, and certainly no risk of someone rinsing your mouth with vinegar, maybe whisper a quiet thank you. Thank you to the people who walked so you could run your sonic airbrush across your teeth for 2 minutes without fear, so you could grumble about dental bills instead of dental leeches. Because history isn't just about suffering. It's a testament to stubborn hope and relentless human ingenuity, even if that ingenuity sometimes involved charcoal toothpaste and cow fat. Tomorrow morning, When you squeeze that familiar tube and swish with minty freshness, spare a thought for those who came before you, for every ancient soul who tried to fight halitosis with fennel seeds, and every peasant who braved the barber's chair. May your sleep be peaceful, your dreams be gentle, and your breath thankfully be fresher than theirs ever was. Good night, and may your sleep be as soothing as a warm mug of mouthwash without any of the side effects.